Alright, so let's give you guys an example of how to run a simulation. Alright, so I got this warm up. I'm going to put this up on Google Classroom so you guys can have it if you wanna look at it or if you want a blank copy. So it says, did you know that in 2018, 22% of baseball players struck out when they came up to bat? 10 years ago, it was less than 18%. So it's changed quite a bit. So in 2018, if I went to a Cubs game, what is the probability that at least one Cub will strike out in an inning? So to make things easy, we're going to assume that only 3 batters come to the plate during the inning. This will just make life a lot easier. It says run 6 simulations to estimate this probability using the random digits table below. Okay? All right. So remember, at any point in time, if you want to slow things down, or you can pause this video or start it over just so you guys have it. Okay? So when it comes time for the state, we are going to talk about what we are actually trying to do. So that's actually in the last sentence of this problem. We are going to run 6 simulations to estimate that at least one Cub will strike out when 3 batters come to the plate. Okay? So the state is a pretty simple thing. It's just rewriting what you are actually looking for. Okay, now in order to do this with a random digits table, I have to assign things. Okay, so we are going off of the 2018 numbers. So it says in 2018, 22 players of baseball struck out. So I need to assign 22% of numbers to represent striking out. So I'm going to make a note to myself. We're going to use numbers 00 through 99. Okay, so that's 100 numbers. If 22% of baseball players strike out, so I need 22 of these numbers to represent striking out. So we'll say the numbers 00 through 21 represent striking out. All right, therefore the other numbers, we'll say numbers 22 through 99 represent not striking out. Okay. So now that I have this explanation, I have to write how I'm actually going to run the simulation. All right, so this is very similar to what we did in chapter 4. We'll say using a random digits table, we will pick 3 two-digit numbers. Okay, these 2-digit numbers represent each batter. Okay, we'll say that, let me move this so we can see it. The simulation is considered a success if at least one batter strikes out. And we'll say the simulation is considered a failure otherwise. Okay, so we're picking 3 of these numbers to represent 3 batters. Okay, and we're going to consider it a success if at least one batter strikes out. That means that at least one of my numbers is between 00 and 21. And the simulation is considered a failure otherwise. And then just as a final note, we will say how many simulations we're running. So we'll say run the simulation 6 times. Okay, so I have to pick 3 two-digit numbers 6 times. Okay, so next stage of this is to actually run the simulation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight these first sets of numbers. Okay, so I got 41 as my first batter, 85 is my second batter, 99 is my third batter. So these are my first three batters. So if we're looking, the first two numbers are 41. That represents not striking out. Then 85, not striking out. Then 99, not striking out. So that first simulation, we'll get there. Okay, we'll say simulation number 1 was a failure. Nobody struck out during that simulation. Okay, now I go to number 2, the next. Let's change the colors here. Do red. The next three batters. So I've got 41, 98, and 37. Those are my next three batters. If we look, we want at least one person striking out, so we want at least one person between 0, 0, and 21. 41's too big, 98's too big, 37's too big. So nobody struck out during this simulation neither. Okay, so that makes simulation number 2. Simulation number 2, a failure as well. Okay, let's keep going. So next simulation, I've got 3 more batters. I've got 18, 26, and 13. Okay, so 18 represents striking out, 26 is not striking out, and 13 is striking out. So in this simulation, I've got 2 people striking out. That's what I'm looking for, at least one person striking out here. Okay, so that means simulation number 3 was a success. Okay, now at this point in time, what I want you guys to do, you can either pause it or you can fast forward. Why don't you, I've done 3 simulations. Why don't you do 3 more? Okay, I can pause this, so I'm just going to keep going. But I want you guys to pause the video and then fast forward a little bit later, see how you did. If you want the explanation, I'll keep going. All right, next simulation. We got 45. Hold on, I'll get there. That was 1, 2, 3. Okay, next simulation. I've got 45. He didn't strike out. 88 didn't strike out. 85 didn't strike out. So this simulation, again, was a failure. Okay, I got 2 more simulations. So the next one, I've got 75. He didn't strike out. 32, he didn't strike out. And then I've got 04. He did strike out. So I've got at least one strikeout here. So this one was a success. Number 5, success. And I need one more simulation here. Get one more color. Let's use purple. Okay, I've got number 86. He didn't strike out. 72, he didn't strike out. 15, he did strike out. Okay, so I had at least one person striking out here. So simulation number 6 was a success. Okay, so now after I run the simulation, I've got to conclude. Okay, so in order to conclude, I'm going to figure out how many successes I had. So we will say the estimated probability of at least one cub striking out And we'll say from 3 batters is, and then I just have to look. I had 3 successes and 6 total trials. So we can say it's 3 successes out of 6 total trials. So I've got about 50% is my estimated probability. Okay, so there you go. You start with the state where you repeat everything that you're going to be doing. Then you have to assign the numbers and explain how you guys are going to run the simulation. And then we actually run the simulation, how many times they ask. So in this case, it was 6 times. And then the results are just what your findings were, how many successes you had over how many trials. And there you guys go. That's how you run a simulation.